It's becoming clearer and clearer that the Orioles are going to be some version of sellers at this year's trade deadline. But the big question is, who are they going to deal and who is most likely to be dealt? We'll try to parse that out coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Wednesday, July 16th, 2025, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we're going to take a look at all of the Orioles' potential tradable players at this year's deadline, because even though it's fairly clear they're going to be sellers, they're not going into a full teardown. Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, Grayson Rodriguez, Jordan Westburg, these guys are not going to be dealt this year. But there are some rentals, some guys approaching free agency that the Orioles may want to flip to try and be better and be a playoff team again in 2026. So I'm going to run through a long list of Orioles, kind of throw them into categories and power rank them based on who I think is most likely to be traded away by the Orioles before the July 31st deadline. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast. Before we get there, though, just did want to thank you for making Locked On Orioles your first podcast listen of the day. We're free and available on all podcast listening platforms. If it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure you subscribe, follow the show, leave a 5-star rating and a review. It really, really helps out the pod. And we're here on YouTube. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. We just surpassed 9,000 subscribers here on YouTube, and I thank you all for that. And if you stay tuned for the end of this here episode, I will announce what the giveaway is, because we do a giveaway for every 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. I'll announce what the giveaway is, how to enter, but the first step is you must be subscribed on YouTube to enter. So I will announce the giveaway at the end of the show, and thank you all for getting to 9,000. And also, if you just want to talk ball, you got Orioles questions, mailbag questions, whatever it may be, you can always email me, lockedonorioles@gmail.com. So no Orioles game, obviously, on Tuesday in the All-Star break. All-Star game happened. I'm recording this about 2 hours before first pitch of the All-Star game on Tuesday night. So hopefully Ryan O'Hearn was named game MVP. Not really sure what he did in the game as I record here. But we do have, I think, a good amount to talk about, because it's getting fairly intriguing what the Orioles might potentially do at this year's deadline. Unfortunately, not as intriguing as it would have been maybe 4 days ago after the Orioles had won 6 of 7 and were feeling good. Then just 2 absolute stinkers of losses to the Marlins to end the first half. And now they're back to 9 games under. They're back to 7.5 games back of the final wild card spot, with still 6 teams sitting between them and Seattle, I believe, who's in that final spot right now. Seattle or Boston. Either way, or it might even be Tampa Bay. Either way, they're far back still. And time is dwindling. And right now we are 15 days away from the trade deadline. Thursday, July 31st at 6 p.m. Eastern time is the trade deadline. The Orioles are actually off that day, which is kind of nice. They don't play a game while the deadline is happening. We can kind of fully focus on what the O's are going to do there. And if you haven't accepted that the O's will be at least some version of sellers, it's probably time to do that at this point, that they are going to trade away some major league players at this year's deadline. I don't think you can argue that at this point of the season when they are still this far behind. It does not mean they are going into a rebuild, anything close to what they did when Mike Elias first took over. He's made it clear. I think it's pretty obvious with the young core this team still has, the starting pitching, they should get back healthy by the end of this year and into next year. The Orioles are trying to compete and get back to the postseason and beyond in 2026. And this year's deadline hopefully can retool them to be good again next year. And actually, on tomorrow's episode, we're going to talk about what exactly the Orioles should be looking for, what kind of players they should try to get back when they make these trades. And the O's did already make one trade, sending Brian Baker to the Rays for that compensation draft pick, number 37 overall. They took the high school outfielder Slater DeBrun on Sunday with that selection. So they've already made one seller type deal, although as I talked about when that deal was made last week, you kind of have to look at it separate of the Orioles' full deadline plans. It was just an offer they couldn't pass up on a reliever that they're kind of selling high on who was out of options. but there's still going to be other guys dealt. And I think the question for many Orioles fans has been who gets dealt and who's most likely. Because the Orioles, I think, if you count Brian Baker, who was traded, I feel like they have 15 legitimately tradable players. Most of those guys on the active roster, a couple of them currently on the injured list, but 15 players who I feel in some version are legitimately tradable. Now, I can tell you right now, the Orioles are not going to be trading away all 15 of those players. A lot of them are going to help them this year, help them next year and beyond. But there are a good amount of rentals. Those are players who become free agents after the 2025 season. A chunk of them who the O's probably aren't super planning on extending or bringing back for next year, who they should capitalize on the value because it's just so far out of the picture, odds-wise, for the Orioles to turn around and make the postseason this year. And that is where they are. So I'm going to rank these guys 1 through 15 with some categories to jump into. And let's start with number 1. I think it's fun to start from the top. Let's really talk about the guys who I feel pretty certain are going to be playing for other teams by the time we get to August 1st. And I think number 1 on my list is Seranthony Dominguez. This kicks off what I call the take the best offer tier of players. I have 3 Orioles in this tier where it's like the O's should be planning to trade these 3 players away. There should be multiple offers from multiple teams on each of these guys and just take the best one and go. Now we'll talk about tomorrow what the best offer exactly looks like, but Seranthony Dominguez for me is number 1 on this list. Now Dominguez has been absolutely filthy this season. It has been especially good lately. He's allowed just 2 earned runs in his last 19 appearances. He's really been, I think you could make the strong argument, he's been the Orioles' best relief pitcher this year, and he is on an expiring contract. He is due to be a free agent at the end of this season. And the other thing you got to think about with Dominguez is like he's 30 years old. He's had a very up and down career. The Orioles would be selling high on a guy who's thrown 38 1/3 innings to a 3.29 ERA and a 3.5 FIP, really high 32% strikeout rate, still a concerning 14% walk rate. But what he's done is he's found that new splitter that's allowed him to get lefties out. It's allowed him to drop his home run rates. And it's really allowed him to just be a much, much better pitcher who can get guys out of both sides of the plate. He's not the closer for this Orioles team. He's more of a setup guy, but he has closing experience last year with the O's and previously with the Phillies as well. And pretty much every contending team, it feels like, is looking for at least one good reliever at the deadline to upgrade their bullpen, because generally, again, relievers are cheaper than starters to get at the deadline. You can always get a better bullpen. No one's bullpen is ever perfect because bullpens are so volatile. There's going to be a huge chunk of teams in on Dominguez. And I don't think Mike Elias wants to go extending relievers who are in their 30s. So I really think this is the perfect storm of he's just almost definitely going to be traded, and the Orioles could just create a bidding war. Now, I'm going to do an episode next week here on the show where I kind of look at the Orioles' most likely traded players, including Dominguez, and try to rank them among the other relievers or rental relievers who are out there. But in my short research, Dominguez is a top 3 rental reliever available, and you could argue he's the best one who could be out there, which means the Orioles will have a bidding war on their hands, and again, should just take the best offer. I mean, possible suitors is everyone, but in the Diamondbacks, if they decide to be buyers, they're 29th in projected bullpen moving forward. The Reds are 25th, the Tigers 23rd, Giants 22nd, Cubs 21st, all teams trying to get to the playoffs, but really everyone should be in on Seranthony Dominguez. In a similar spot, number 2 on my list, also in the take the best offer tier, is left-hander Gregory Soto. Just like Dominguez, he came over to the Orioles at the deadline last year. Just like Dominguez, he's got huge stuff, has closer potential, closer stuff, has closing experience, has had a very up and down career, and just like Dominguez, is due to be a free agent after this season. And the Orioles probably, again, aren't super looking to extend a guy in Gregory Soto, who is also 30 years old and is a very volatile reliever. Now, he's thrown 33 2/3 innings, 3.74 ERA, 3.26 FIP, 27% strikeout rate to a 10% walk rate. His ground ball rates are actually a little bit down this year. He's been really great against left-handers. He throws 99 from the left side. You always want that. And again, teams won't want him as much as Dominguez because A, Dominguez has been better, and B, if you are a team who already has a dominant lefty, you're probably not going to push as much for another dominant lefty, whereas you can take a dominant righty at any point, really. It just provides you better matchups. But if you look at a team that already has just this lockdown, like I look at the Tigers, for example, right? They've got these guys, not that they are, fire breathers at the back end, but they've got Brant Herter and Tyler Holton, two good lefties in their bullpen, plus Tommy Kahnle, who throws all those changeups and gets lefties out. I think the Tigers would be all over Dominguez, but maybe not Soto because they don't necessarily need to add a lefty specifically. But if a team feels their bullpen is lacking a good left-hander, Soto's going to be at the top of the board of those guys available. And once again, the Orioles can just set up a bidding war. You've got the Giants. They have the number 22 projected bullpen moving forward, and they have no lefties in that bullpen projected to have a positive WAR for the rest of the season because Eric Miller, their top lefty, just got hurt. The Yankees, who have the 14th projected bullpen, are in the same boat where, like, basically Tim Hill is the only lefty they've got out there and could use a guy like Gregory Soto. I think Soto and Dominguez package deal is possible to the same team, but I think the O's would do better spreading them out and just letting the bidding war happen between the two of them. And then my third player on this list, number 3, and the final player in the take the best offer tier is Charlie Morton. And who would have thought 2 months ago that I would even be considering the fact that the Orioles could get something back at the trade deadline for Charlie Morton? But that is where we are, because quietly, or not quietly to Orioles fans, but quietly to everyone else, he's been outstanding over his last 11 outings and has been one of the best starters in Major League Baseball in that stretch. Now, I know he is 41 years old, but he's on an expiring contract. He becomes a free agent. He's also thrown 80 career postseason innings with a 3.60 ERA in the playoffs, and he's worked in both starting and relief roles in the postseason too, so he has pretty much more experience than anyone you could get at the deadline this year in terms of pitching in the playoffs for you. And maybe he wouldn't be one of someone's top 3 postseason starters, but at the very least, with the way he's throwing the ball right now, he can help you get to the playoffs. He can help you fill innings. Maybe then you can move him to the pen on the postseason roster because he did pitch well out of the bullpen when the Orioles moved him there earlier this year. And again, it's a lot of possible suitors because most good teams probably feel like they could use an extra starting pitcher. Charlie Morton shouldn't be crazy expensive because he's 41 years old and he's a rental, but he's also pitching well. You know, the Cubs have the 25th projected starting rotation the rest of the way. Jameson Taillon just got hurt. They could be a fit. The Giants definitely need another arm. I mean, you know, the Dodgers are going to stockpile healthy arms. I could totally see them getting him and then stashing him in the bullpen for the playoffs. I mean, it's surprising that Charlie Morton and his resurgence and all the data that's gone into it hasn't pitched for the Dodgers yet. It feels like something that certainly could happen. And I know it feels crazy. And if you look at his overall stats, you still say, well, Connor, he's got a 5.18 ERA in 83 innings. Do teams really want that? They're going to look at current performance. They're going to look at the great track record Charlie Morton has year over year and in the postseason as well. Teams are going to want him. They are absolutely going to want him. And the Orioles should just take the best offer because they have the ability with some arms coming back healthy to fill those innings in the rotation. Now, those are the 3 big ones. Those are the ones where it's like, get a good deal, send them away. Next tiers, there's going to be some conversations to be had. We're going to dive into some position players, some other rentals, and some interesting pieces the Orioles have coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. And if you need help with an order, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, they're free. TradeMaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the TradeMaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's at supplyhouse.com. So we are ranking the Orioles most likely to be traded away at this year's deadline. We move from that top tier, which was that take the best offer tier of Dominguez, Soto, and Morton. And this is tier number 2 for me. This is the only if you're probably not bringing him back tier. These are guys who the Orioles have further decisions to make on because there's a chance that these players could be Orioles in 2026 and beyond. There's a chance the Orioles could want these guys to be Orioles in 2026 and beyond. The first guy on that list, who is number 4 on my list of most likely traded Orioles, is Ryan O'Hearn, who just competed in the All-Star game last night as the AL starting DH. He's fallen off a little bit since June 1st. That is certainly the case. He's been a below average hitter since then. But overall, in 82 games, he's got a 138 WRC plus. He's walking 12% of the time, striking out just 16% of the time. He's hitting the ball hard. He's playing much better defense at first base. He can play a corner outfield if you absolutely need him to. He at least has a little bit of versatility in that sense. I wouldn't trust him out there every day. I think we know that, but he can do it if you need it. And he's hit lefties slightly better. You still don't want to play him every day, I don't think, against lefties, but he can hold his own a little bit better. And he is a tough spot because even though the defense has gotten better at first, he's still limited by it's not a full versatility where he can play other positions. And maybe the Orioles want to extend him instead, right? They really don't have a lot of hitters that are producing at the level O'Hearn is this year. I mean, you look at just his stats. He's second on this team behind Raone Laureano in WRC plus at 138. And you also look around and you think, okay, these guys have a lot of power, and O'Hearn has that too, but his swing decisions are so much better. It's a low strikeout rate. It's a high walk rate. It's a high contact rate, but with a good hard hit rate. It's not something the Orioles have. And you're looking at Ryan Mountcastle and you're like, are they going to move on from him? Obviously, Heston Kjerstad is not as much of a ready to take his spot guy as he was 6 months ago in terms of Ryan O'Hearn. So maybe you want to bring him back, but also he could end up being one of the best rental bats on the market. He's going to be kind of competing with Josh Naylor of the D-backs, and the Orioles should be cheering for the D-backs to win games and become buyers, because if they're sellers, they have some pieces that could rival what the Orioles could give away. If they're not, you take Naylor off the board, Ryan O'Hearn might be the one of, if not the best rental bats who is available out there, and it's another guy who the Orioles kind of start a bidding war for. And you're looking for possible suitors. I mean, you have the Brewers. They've got Rhys Hoskins out for a while now. They're kind of relying on Andrew Vaughn and Jake Bauers at first base at the moment. We talked about the Reds and the Mariners on the episode last week. Maybe the Red Sox could look for Ryan O'Hearn. Ken Rosenthal keeps reporting they are looking for a first baseman after Rafael Devers certainly is not playing that position in Boston. Maybe the Padres could use another bat there. Like, there are some guys out there, and for the right deal, the Orioles could move him, but I'd also be okay if the O's decided to bring him back and give him a couple more years to come back, because he's such an important part of this Orioles lineup, and they don't really have another hitter who profiles like him in the middle of that order. Number 5 on my list of most likely O's to be traded, the second guy in the only if you're probably not bringing him back tier, is Andrew Kitridge, the right-handed reliever who has been solid since the Orioles got him finally off the injured list, missing the first 2 months with that kind of cleanup knee surgery that he needed to have in spring training. Now, Kitridge is 35. He's got a 4.01 ERA, low walk numbers, okay strikeout numbers in 24 2/3 innings. Still a pretty low sample size for him. His FIP is lower than his ERA, which is good to see. Still struggles a little bit to get lefties out, but he's been great against righties, had an awesome track record. But he also has a $9 million team option for 2026. So if the Orioles wanted to, they could just keep him around, pick up the team option, and have a solid veteran reliever for fairly cheap back in their bullpen next year. So the Orioles really got to compare, okay, what is his trade value? What are teams potentially offering us for Kitridge versus what is his value to us for $9 million to bring him back in 2026. Now, veteran relief arms are pretty easy to replace, and how much are you going to count on a 36-year-old reliever who had injury issues this year? But his possible suitors are pretty much anyone. Could use a guy like Andrew Kitridge if he is pitching at peak form. It's just about how do the Orioles kind of weigh that value. Now, number 6 on my list, also in the only if you're probably not bringing him back tier, I had much lower when I made this list last week. Then we got some really positive injury news on Zach Eflin over the weekend. He threw 4 innings in a rehab start in Double-A on Sunday. He's going to throw to live batters on Friday of this week. And then Tony Mansolino said after that, if he's all good, he could return, which means by basically next Tuesday or Wednesday, Eflin could return to the Orioles rotation. What that means is he's going to get to make 2 big league starts potentially before we even get to the trade deadline. When he first went on the injured list, a few weeks ago with that back issue, it seemed like he was going to be out until past the deadline. He was pitching really poorly before the injury. And when you combine that, it's like no team's probably going to want to take a chance on him and actually trade for him. But if he's able to come back and pitch well in these potential 2 starts he has before the deadline, Eflin is back on the market potentially. He is a rental starting pitcher. He's had a really good track record until his probably injury-laced struggled this year. And teams are going to be worried about the back injury and the lat injury that he's had this season. But he's got that track record of success. And again, the possible suitors, I don't know how much you want this version of Zach Eflin pitching a postseason game, but he's certainly one of those guys who's going to get you there. He's going to cover innings for you if he's healthy. He's going to get you there. And you can get by with Zach Eflin if he's maybe your 3rd best starting pitcher in the postseason if he pitches the way he has for the Orioles before these injuries popped up this year. But also, if he comes back from the back thing and the Orioles think he's healthy, I've been saying for a while that Eflin is a guy they should extend to a 2 or 3 year deal to get him back in this rotation. It's kind of a middle of the rotation starter to eat innings and be as good as he has been. He's still 31 years old. He's got some years ahead of him. It's really about how the Orioles feel about the injury long-term versus how other teams feel about the injury long-term. It's going to be a really interesting decision for the Orioles, but he's definitely back on the table of being traded if he does return and at least look okay in those potential 2 starts. Number 7 on the list of most likely Orioles to be dealt, also in the only if you're not bringing him back tier, is Raone Laureano, who very sneaky could be the most valuable trade piece the Orioles realistically have at this year's deadline. Because A, Laureano has been incredible. He has been, by WRC Plus, the Orioles' best hitter this year with a 140 WRC Plus. His defense hasn't been outstanding, but he's solid out there. He's hit 11 homers. He's hitting 284, 517 slugging, 350 on base. You can stick him in center field if you had to, but you can trust him in the corner outfield. He usually hits lefties, not doing that as much, but is really hitting righties well, which makes him even more than a platoon bat, which is why the O's have played him so much. He's been so great. And it's not just his great season that's making him valuable. It's also the fact that he'd be pretty cheap to bring back next year. Laureano has a $6.5 million team option for 2026. If you're paying $6.5 million for a position player to produce like this, he is being well underpaid. That is a great value if Laureano gives you anything close next year to what he's done this year. And for the Orioles, it's kind of similar to like the Kitridge and the Eflin conversations. It's how much is having Laureano back with you for $6.5 million next year if he can produce like anything close to this. How much do you think a guy in Laureano who's had a very up and down career can sustain this season, which has been one of the best of his career so far, at least in the first half, versus how much would a team that needs outfield help and sees that he's controllable for cheap for next year, but could also just decline the option if it goes poorly, how much would a team pay for that versus how much is Laureano worth to the Orioles if they think, hey, we're going to have Cowser, maybe we'll have Mullins back, maybe O'Hearn, Beavers and Kerstad and Tyler O'Neill in this lineup, and we want to sign another outfielder. How much do the Orioles think, hey, we could just get another Laureano for very cheap in free agency like we did this year? But if they do feel it's more valuable to deal him, and he could be, again, the guy that gets the most back because of that cheap option and how productive he's been, the Royals are last in projected production from their right fielders. Phillies are 29th. The Reds, the Tigers with Kerry Carpenter hurt, the Astros are all teams that could be in on Laureano. Number 8 on the list, the final guy in the only if you're probably not bringing him back tier, is Cedric Mullins, who's in a similar boat to Ryan O'Hearn in that he's a fan favorite, has brought a lot to this franchise, but is also an impending free agent this year. But he's not like O'Hearn because he has much more defensive value. I know the underlying stats, the metrics don't say he's a great center fielder, but I think every team in Major League Baseball would trust Cedric Mullins to play center field for them right now. But also his value with his bat is much lower down for Mullins than it is for O'Hearn. He started off the season red hot, was one of the best hitters in baseball in April. Since then, he hasn't been good. Overall, he's got a 101 WRC+. Basically, in the long run, in 79 games, the 30-year-old Mullins has been a league average hitter who's still playing okay defense in center field. Like, he's been a one-WAR player this year. What is that really worth to a team as a rental center fielder? There's not a lot of one-to-one comparisons for, what teams have gotten for guys like Cedric Mullins. So it is kind of tough to parse out what they could get back in a trade like this. Do they want to bring him back for one more year? Do they think, hey, we can definitely just put not Heston Kjerstad, put Colton Cowser in center field next year and we have these other outfielders? Or do we want to bring Mullins back for another year? Does anybody really want Cedric Mullins? I think that's why he's as low as he is at number 8 on my list right now, not higher, even though he's a rental. He's in a weird spot. I kind of have no idea what his value is, but if a team comes calling, the Orioles, I think, would trade him, right? Like the Royals need outfield bats, the Guardians, if they go for it, the Mets, maybe, the Phillies, the Astros had some reported interest, and now their center fielder, Jake Myers, is hurt, so maybe they want even more of Cedric Mullins, but he's just a weird case, but he's still in this category. So we've got one more tier to get to. We're going to fly through it a little bit quicker because these are the guys who are less likely to be dealt, but it is possible. We'll talk about some more controllable pieces beyond Brian Baker that maybe the O's would trade. That is coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. And Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. And for me, I share my finances with my wife. Monarch helps just us stay on the same page at all times. And because the app and the website is super easy to use, especially the app, it's all in one. So you can just manage your money day to day and get everything right there. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. All right, so let's get to the bottom part of this list. I am ranking the Orioles most likely to be traded at this year's deadline. I am tiering them. I've gone through the top 8 most likely. The rest of the guys I'm going to talk about are much less likely to be dealt. My next tier is called the, quote, if the right price is offered tier. These are guys who the Orioles aren't going to be shopping around at the deadline. They're going to be totally fine holding on to them and having them help the Orioles in 2026 and beyond. But if a team came at them and said, here's this, the O's would say, wow, we can't turn that down, and they would actually trade these players. And the funny thing is, I made this list last Wednesday when I was kind of getting ahead of preparing for podcasts. You know what happened the next day? The Orioles traded Brian Baker to the Rays for that draft pick. When I made this list the day before that, I put Brian Baker at number 9 on this list. And I said, here's from my notes, been great this year, controlled through 2028, but if out of options and is very volatile, might be the perfect time to sell high if the right offer comes in. And clearly the right offer came in because the Orioles pulled the trigger on this trade. So that's the kind of player and the kind of trade that still could be made. So next up, then number 10 on the list is Yennier Cano. Now, he is a guy who's having some struggles this year and even did go down to AAA for a spell. He hasn't been the same pitcher, although he's still been good this season. There's some things for him to try and get back. 32 innings. He's got a 4.68 ERA, but a 3.57 FIP. His ground ball rate is a little bit down. Although the walks are down and the strikeouts are up, there's still a good Yennier Cano in there. He's controlled through 2028, still has great stuff, and he has minor league options even heading into next year. But it would probably be selling kind of low for Cano. If a team wanted to overpay, maybe the Orioles would consider it. But after they traded Baker, when I made the list, I kind of thought, okay, it would be one or the other of Baker or Cano. If they trade one, probably not the other. So I think it's more likely they hold on to Cano at this point. But because they made the Baker deal, if someone gives up even more, because Cano's worth more than Baker is, if someone wants to give up even more, the Orioles still could pull that trigger. Number 11 on the list, still in the if the right price is offered tier, is Keegan Akin. Now, he's currently on the IL with a shoulder injury. He is, I believe, planning to start rehab assignments this week in AAA. So it's only if he's back and looking healthy and okay. He's a solid lefty who's versatile. He's a free agent after next season, after 2026, and he is out of options. So teams could want him if he comes off the IL. He's lower on this list, not because I think the Orioles would be reticent in trading him. It's just that he's having a little more of a down year this year. He's now out of options. He's got the shoulder issue. I just think that all those things make him less likely to be traded, which is why he's number 11 on this list. And number 12 on the list, the final player in the if the right price is offered tier, is Raone Laureano. I've seen his name kind of floated around by a few writers about potentially being traded, but I just don't really see it. Seems like he's more valuable to the Orioles than he is to anyone else. That's what we talk about every time we talk about, hey, would the Orioles trade Raone Laureano? But he is a free agent. It's coming up now. He's a free agent after 2026. And maybe you like a guy like Luis Vasquez or a Jeremiah Jackson or a Levon Soto. maybe better suited, younger, and cheaper for the role of utility infielder that Arias currently plays. And so you want to make that move because someone really wants it. Maybe the Yankees, if they don't make a bigger deal at third base, want Arias. Maybe a team like the Angels wants to upgrade over there for 2 years and you get an offer you can't refuse. I wouldn't put it out of the question that they would trade away Ramon Arias. And then the final tier I want to get to has the final 3 players, and that is the, quote, sure, if anyone really wants him tier. Number 13, first one in this tier, is Tomoyuki Sugano. Now, a couple of months ago, we would have said, hey, if the O's are out of it, they could trade Sugano. But at this point, with a 4.44 ERA, a 5.16 FIP in 99 innings over 18 starts, he's posted. He's stayed healthy. It's still a 5% walk rate, but he's not missing bats. He's been really, really bad. He had a better start. He definitely had a better start earlier this week. But since then, it's not been very good. Last 5, 6, 7 starts or so. I don't know if a team's gonna buy in on this. I think Sugano is more of a guy where they always just keep him around. He eats innings. He stays in the rotation for the rest of the year, helps cover the rest of the season. And then if he turns it back around, maybe they consider bringing him back for 2026, or he kind of just has maybe a 1-year foray into Major League Baseball, potentially signs elsewhere, goes back to Japan. It'll be interesting to see, but I don't know if anyone really wants him. Number 14, next guy in this tier is Tyler O'Neill. He is finally back from the injured list. He's not performing well. I mean, if someone really wants to take on that contract, because he has a player opt out after this season, with the season he's having, unless he goes scorched earth for the final 2 months, he's probably opting in. So you got 2 more years and 30 plus million left on that deal. If anyone really wants it, they can take him, but I don't think anyone will. And the final guy in this tier, number 15 on the list, is Ryan Mountcastle. His injury makes it tough. He is slated to start a rehab assignment next week, and he's eligible to come off the 60-day IL on July 30th, which is the day before the trade deadline. He's a free agent after next year, so he's controlled through next season. The injury makes him tough to deal, but I don't really see a great spot for him on next year's Orioles. He hasn't been great. I think the O's are pretty close to moving on from Mountcastle, but the injury just means you can't really move him. Maybe the only way it happens is that if Mountcastle does really return on July 30th, that day, who are the Orioles playing? The Blue Jays. Mountcastle has a 3-homer game against Toronto, like he's been known to do, and some team takes a shot on him the next day. Maybe it's possible, but yeah, with the injury and the hamstring he suffered and the low performance this year, he's that low down on this list. But let me know, especially here in the Locked On Orioles YouTube comments section, like, how did I do? How would you rank these guys in terms of most likely to be dealt? Is there anyone I didn't put on this list of 15 who you think could be traded? I know Felix Bautista's name has been floated out there, but that'd be selling low. They're trying to win next year. He's one of the best closers in the game. I really do not see the Orioles trading Felix Bautista. That's why he's not on this list. But any other names you could see the O's potentially dealing at the deadline, let me know here. And also, as I promised, we're doing a giveaway. So again, thank you to everyone who got us past 9,000 subscribers here on the Locked On Orioles YouTube page. As I've done since the YouTube started, every 1,000 subscribers, we do a giveaway. And the giveaway, once again, it's been this, or at least a version of this a couple of times, to celebrate the latest Hawaiian shirt. Now, it is not the latest Hawaiian shirt. Couldn't get my hands on one of those, but this is one of the more recent versions. If you can see it right here on YouTube, I'm doing a great job of holding this up. But one of the most recent versions of the Orioles Hawaiian shirt. It has not been worn, and it can be yours if you win this giveaway. So here is how to enter. Step 1, you must be subscribed to the Locked On Orioles podcast on YouTube. You got to be subscribed right here on YouTube. Even if you don't watch on YouTube, doesn't change your life. You just hit that subscribe button. You have to be subscribed. And then you have to comment on either today's episode or any episode through the rest of this week. So the Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday episodes. In the comment section, I want you to tell me, what is your favorite Orioles trade of all time? Kind of celebrating the trade deadline coming up. It might not be pleasant for Orioles fans. As we talked about, they're probably going to be sellers. Let's at least get some pleasant trade memories. Doesn't have to be exactly a trade deadline deal. It could be an off-season move. But tell me, again, step 1, subscribe to the podcast on YouTube. Step 2, in the YouTube comments of either today's video or the Thursday or Friday videos, tell me your favorite Orioles trade of all time and why. I'll give you my 2. I'll give you my favorite seller trade and my favorite buyer trade. My favorite seller trade is pretty obvious. The Eric Bedard trade got the Orioles back 3 All-Stars in that trade, and Adam Jones, Chris Tillman, and George Sherrill. My favorite buyer trade has to be the Corbin Burnes trade. That was one of my biggest episodes ever, was going live here on YouTube right after the Orioles got him from the Brewers about a year and a half ago. That was so much fun to see them really go all in and get an ace-type starting pitcher, and just how good Burnes was in Baltimore last season. So those are my two favorites. But let me know in the comments section, subscribe on YouTube, and you will be entered to win the Hawaiian shirt. It will close on Saturday. I will do the drawing on Sunday, and on either Monday or Tuesday's episode of next week, I will announce the winner of the Orioles Hawaiian shirt. So make sure you enter there, and we will be back tomorrow with another episode, even though there's no Orioles games. We're on the All-Star break. I want to take a further look at, okay, if the Orioles really are going to be sellers at the deadline, these are the players I laid out today who are most likely to be traded. What should the Orioles be looking for at the deadline? Because they're not full sellers, right? They're not in the middle of a rebuild. They're not just looking for any prospect, even if they're 18 or 19 years old. The Orioles are retooling and trying to be a winning ball club again and get to the postseason and win a World Series in 2026 and beyond. So shouldn't they be looking for players who are at least a little bit closer to the big leagues? I'll break down exactly what kind of prospects or big league type players the Orioles should be targeting to get back in these deals coming up on tomorrow's episode. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.